Hey guys, welcome back to Life by the Bow. Obviously today is very different because we're tucked away inside versus being outside where we're typically filming fishing videos. But if you guys didn't know, there's a hurricane within our vicinity, so it's easily blowing about 35, 40 knots out right now. So not too favorable to be in a boat. But I want to start bringing you guys more videos like this in order to keep the content flowing, keep the information flowing. So I felt like it was a perfect time to do a very informational video based on dolphin fishing, rod and reel setups, tackle, lures, just because you guys have been asking a lot about it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the rod and reel setup. And this is a Penn Battle II size 5000, and what I love about the size 5000 reels is you can catch just about any sport fish down here in the Florida Keys with this size reel. Whether it's a sailfish, tuna, dolphin, kingfish, mutton snapper, tarpon, big snook, big redfish, you are 150% covered here. A great alternative is a Daiwa BG. Me personally, I'm a Penn guy, so I've always stuck with Penn. People get on me all the time and they're like, you have all this, nice stuff and you're using such a cheap reel. But in essence, this isn't really a cheap reel. I mean, this is about 100, 120 bucks depending on where you buy it. And in my God honest opinion, that's not cheap. And another thing too is I can promise you that this reel is going to do exactly what a $200, $250, $300 reel is going to do. Is that more expensive reel going to do it better? Yeah, sure, but I can catch just as many fish on this reel as I can an expensive reel. So this works great for me. I'm not knocking expensive gear. It's just all based on preference. I beat the absolute crap out of my stuff, and a lot of the times I have people on the boat that aren't as skilled, so these things do get dropped in the salt water from time to time. They get dropped on concrete from time to time, and it's been about 7 years now with these reels, and so far they seem to be holding up pretty decent. So this is what I suggest if you want to go ahead and buy a dolphin fishing reel. I've been using these for a while now, and I absolutely love them. Moving along, this is a Key Largo custom rod, and the reason why I stuck with Key Largo custom rods is simply just because I wanted to buy local, and I suggest that you guys always buy your rods local. Because when you fish as much as I do, you will break rods, you will break guides, and rather than shipping your rod away, you can go right back to where you bought it. In my case, just 10-15 minutes up the road, I can bring it to them and say, hey, I broke a guide or I broke a rod, and they'll repair it, they'll warranty it, and they've always taken care of me, so that's why I stick with Key Largo custom rods. Another great reason to buy local is simply just because you want to feel your rod before you actually purchase it. You want to make sure it's nice and balanced. In this case, this rod is perfectly balanced for this reel here. And I also have a preference with my rods. I like a nice stiff backbone so that way I can put some heat on some fish when it's needed. But at the same time, I like a really soft tip. And the reason why I like that soft tip is because it gives me extra sensitivity. And at the same time, it's going to help me cast further. So if you guys are local, you are in the Keys, I highly suggest these rods. But if you're not in the Keys, go ahead, go to your local tackle shop, check out what they have. Look into warranty, because warranty is huge, because there are going to be times you're going to break guides, you're going to break rods, and you're going to be happy that you paid the extra money in order to get that rod repaired on the fly versus buying a whole new rod within itself. Now, as far as the line, this is 30-pound Sufix 832 braided line. Some people prefer mono. Me personally, I'm a braid guy, and the reason why I love braid is because it gives me increased sensitivity. It also casts way further than mono, and you also don't have to worry about tangles as much. This reel right here has, I believe, 28 pounds of drag, so 30 pound is absolutely perfect for this reel. Now, why Sufix 832? I've used a lot of other brands, and other brands are great, but I've just found that this is what's worked best for me. 832 specifically, because 832 is very strong, but at the same time it maintains a really thin diameter. And the reason why that thin diameter is important is because when you have a thinner diameter, you can fit a lot more line on this reel, and a thin diameter is going to cast much further than a thicker diameter. There's no specific reason why I choose blue. I just like blue. It's my favorite color, if you couldn't tell. So you can basically use whichever color line you prefer. It really doesn't make a difference. So this is kind of my preference. This is what I like. Now let's go ahead and talk about leader. So my go-to when I'm out dolphin fishing is a 40-pound fluorocarbon leader. Though you can get away with mono, I choose fluorocarbon just simply because fluorocarbon, it's a little more durable than mono, and it's not as visible as mono. Sight isn't something that you should really be concerned with when dolphin fishing because they're a very aggressive fish. But there's a lot of times you can get into a school and those fish may have already eaten, or they've been pounded by two or three other boats before you. So it may be a little difficult to get them to eat. So I just suggest go the extra step and just outfit all of your rods with fluorocarbon, like I mentioned, just because it's a little more durable, but most importantly, it's not as visible, and it's just going to give you a way better presentation. Now, as far as the test, 40 pounds seems to work the best for me down here in the Keys, and the reason why is just because our fish aren't really that big anymore. Some days we struggle just to even find a 20-inch fish, and you know, we're typically averaging around a 25 to 30-inch fish, and you know, that's not really big. I mean, that's sometimes the size of you know, some of the snook and the redfish that we're catching in the backcountry, which sometimes we catch on 20 and 30-pound leaders. So I feel like 40 is plenty. It's just strong enough to the point where you can get a hand wrap on it, flip that fish into the boat without having to put a gaff in them. And that's something that you should always keep in mind when you're dolphin fishing. You don't always have to stick a gaff in the fish. I mean, when you're fishing with a setup like this with a 40-pound leader, rather than waiting around on the gaff shot, you can always flip that fish into the boat rather than gaffing him. And that's something that we do a lot. We do a lot of flipping our dolphin into the boat just because a lot of the times when Stephanie and I are fishing, we just have us two. So rather than taking her time when she could be catching a fish or taking my time when I could be catching a fish waiting for the gaff shot, we just choose to both fish at the same time, not gaff a fish unless we absolutely have to. Instead, we just flip them into the boat. So with that being said, 40 pound is more than enough to go ahead and flip that fish in the boat. Now, here towards the end of August, in certain times throughout the year, we start to get some bigger dolphin. At that point, I'll start outfitting all my rods and reels with 60 pound. Same concept, just enough to flip a bigger size schoolie into the boat. At this point, we're talking about, you know, maybe a 30, 35-inch fish. And, you know, 60 is more than enough. And people may use bigger leaders. They may use heavier pound test leaders. And that's fine, but my preference for my style of fishing, I do a lot of running and gunning. I do a lot of casting. So I want to make sure that my leader's not too big because I want it to surf through my guides real nice and smooth so I can get the longest cast possible. The further the cast, you know, the further you can reach the fish. And if you can't reach the fish, you're probably not catching them more than half the time. So that's just my preference. That's my way, how I like to do things. Moving along to knots, and there's really only, I would say, 4 knots that I use while I'm dolphin fishing, and 2 of those I use a lot more than others. But whenever I'm deadbait fishing, obviously I'll use a J hook like this, but we'll talk about this later on. I'll use just a simple Uni-Knot, and the reason why I use a Uni-Knot is just because it's super durable, super strong, and when you're using deadbait, it doesn't require any action. Now, as far as a live bait or an artificial bait, I'm always tying a loop knot. And the reason why I tie a loop knot is simply because when you have that loop, it's gonna allow the bait to swivel around that loop, and it's gonna give it a lot more action. And like I said, that goes for, you know, an artificial bait, bucktail, live bait. Basically, if you want whatever you're presenting to have more action, you want to tie a loop knot. Like I said, with dead bait, it doesn't matter, doesn't require any action, so a simple Uni-Knot will work just fine. Now, as far as leader, which is this right here, to line connection, I use the FG knot a lot, and it's pretty much all I use anymore just because it's such a strong connection. But if I'm in a hurry, I'll just tie a Double-Uni knot because I can do it a lot quicker than the FG knot. But I love the FG knot because it's super smooth, it serves right through the guides, almost no friction whatsoever, and it's way stronger than a Bimini to a Double-Uni. So that's why I prefer tying that when I have the time. But if I have to tie a connection real quick, I'll typically just do a spider hitch and a Double-Uni knot just because I don't have the time. But if you guys really want to get into it and you want the absolute strongest line to leader connection, look up the FG knot. I highly suggest it. The strongest leader connection that you could possibly tie. Last but not least, let's talk about bait. And there's 3 different types of bait. That is live bait, artificial bait, and dead bait. Now, down here in the Florida Keys, live bait is king. Our fish down here get a lot of pressure, a lot of people down here fishing. So they more than likely always want something that's alive versus something that's artificial or dead. I know you guys don't see me actually live bait fish for dolphin in any of our videos, and that's simply just because when we're filming, I really like to simplify things, and dead bait and artificial bait is really what works best for me while I'm filming. In addition to that, I don't always have accessibility to live bait. I don't like buying anything that I can catch on my own. I know I can catch live bait, so you know it's hard for me to fathom buying it. On the other hand, I can't even pin it up here at my house just because we average 10-20 knot winds here on the ocean side, so that bait just simply won't stay alive and it won't stay lively. So that's something to keep in mind if you guys are making a trip down here and you plan on pinning up some bait. If you are on the ocean side, don't expect that bait to be alive and lively in the morning. So that's something that you always want to keep in the back of your head. There are some times where I'll make a quick bait run first thing in the morning if I know where the pilchards or any type of other live bait has been. I'll stop there real quick, give it a couple minutes, and then move on and just go straight out to dolphin fishing. And the reason why I do that is just because I love the early morning bite. I feel like those fish are most active first thing in the morning and in the afternoon. During around noon, 1, 2 o'clock, they kind of shut off, and then around 3, they start to bite again. And rather than spending my time looking for bait all morning, I'd rather just get out there and fish with artificial baits and dead baits, which work just fine sometimes. You know, school that's not hungry, or they may have already eaten or been pounded by a couple other boats, they're more than likely almost always going to eat the live bait. But when you do run into a school that's eaten or been fished by a couple other people, you may have some trouble using an artificial bait or a dead bait. But that's why it's important for me to get out there first thing in the morning or late in the afternoon where the fish are just starting to eat again, so that way they're nice and fired up and they're not second guessing any of my artificial baits or my dead baits. So let's go ahead and talk about dead bait fishing. I don't really dead bait fish that much just because I'm typically always throwing the artificials, and the reason why I'm throwing the artificials is just because when Stephanie and I are fishing, you know, we have no time to waste. We don't have a big crew, we don't have a captain, we don't have mates or anything like that. It's just us trying to be as efficient as possible in order to catch as many fish as possible. And with an artificial bait, you can just unhook the fish real quick, and then as soon as you unhook the fish, you're fishing right away again. You're not putting on a bait, you're not re-rigging, you're not doing anything fancy like that, and that's what works best for us. That's our preference. You guys may figure out things that work better for you, but that's what works for us. Now, I got a little off track, but let's go ahead and talk about dead bait. Now, when I dead bait fish, I'm simply using, a Mustad J hook, just like that. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy. And the reason why you use a J hook, not a circle hook, is because dolphin, they're extremely aggressive. They swim very, very fast. So if you're using a circle hook, a lot of the times when you go to lock up your bail, that circle hook can rip straight out of their mouth. Now with a J hook, it's more of a traditional set. So this seems to work best for me. Nice long shank, and the reason why I use the long shank is because when dolphin eat, they typically ingest pretty deep down their mouth. And that longer shank is going to give me something to grab onto with pliers in order to dislodge that hook out of their mouth. So yeah, when deadbait fishing, this is all I use right here. Nothing fancy, nothing too sophisticated. Now let's talk about the artificial baits. This is nothing special right here. You can throw just about any artificial bait at a dolphin and they're going to eat it. I can promise you. Whether it's, an inshore lure like this could also be considered an offshore lure nowadays, but I use the same exact lure to catch redfish, snook, tarpon, the same thing with this bucktail. I mean, I catch snook, tarpon, redfish on this same exact lure, and whether it's a fluke, any type of plug, bucktail jig, soft plastic, you can catch a dolphin on it, I promise you. Now, why do I choose these two lures specifically? The reason why I use the bucktail jig is just because it looks like a little, a little minnow, a little fish, and it's very presentable. And then, the fur or the hair, whatever you want to call this on the backside, provides a lot of action. Also, these little gold strips have a little bit of flash, so it looks fishy. It's weighted, it's a jig, so just in case the fish are a little suspended, I can open my bail and this will drop straight down at the bottom, and I can cover different portions of the water column. So this works great. I love this, but at the same time, this does not look as good as this. So this is obviously a very pretty bait. It's also a very expensive bait. I want to say these subwalks are somewhere around the range of $11 to $15 depending on where you buy them. And like I mentioned, I like these because they're pretty and they are also very, very durable. I mean, there's some of these lures I've been using for probably 2-3 dolphin seasons now, and they really hold up. So this is a bait I suggest, but then again, I'm starting to kind of move away from these just because of these single hooks. Though I love these single hooks, the reason why single hooks are important is just because they don't do as much damage to the fish. And then also when you have a dolphin flailing around in the cockpit, you don't really have to worry about treble hooks going into your foot or leg. So that's what's nice about these single hooks. But what I do not like about these single hooks is they shake fish very easily. So I probably catch about, I would say, 70% of the dolphin that I hook on this lure. It doesn't hurt me that much just because when we do dolphin fish, like I said, we run and gun and we get into big schools of them. So if we lose a fish, we're typically hooking one just as fast as we lose it. And the single hooks really come in handy when it comes to unhooking a fish and getting back to fishing as quick as possible. But if I were to really fill my tackle box, I wouldn't fill it as much with these Rapalas, just because, like I said, they are very expensive and they don't work as well as a jig. So I would definitely get a lot of these. This is, I believe, a 1/4 ounce Personally, I like going up to a full ounce or a half ounce just because it's going to help me cast a little further. So if I had to say stick with 2 go-to lures, these are my choice. This is what I enjoy using. A lot of the times when they aren't as hungry and they're finicky, like I talked about earlier, they'll sometimes shy away from this just because it's not as fishy looking. And I truly believe, based on how realistic this lure looks, you will get more bites off of something like this. But that's basically everything I have to share. A lot of information, definitely a lot of talking. I'm not going to say that this is the end-all be-all approach to dolphin fishing. This is just what works for me, excuse me. Let me know in the comments below if you like this, you enjoyed the video, because that really kind of motivates me to do more videos like this. And if you have your own preference, your own style of dolphin fishing that you like to do and you want to share, go ahead and put it in the comments below, because that could help a lot of people out. Appreciate you guys watching. If you aren't already subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you guys did like the video. And if you're new here, go ahead and check out some of our fishing videos, some really cool stuff. But until then, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much.